guess you know you use a Mac when you're not sure.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
F5, try F5.
It's down here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erica St. Dennis, and I am a music education major.
Hello, my name is Grace Demrios, and I am a sophomore music education major.
And today we will be presenting our independent study research on metal contact dermatitis in the instrumental and general music classrooms, removing dermatological barriers. We will be discussing some adaptive techniques to use with instruments for students that have metal allergies.
I myself have gone through the process of finding a way to adapt my own instrument. When I first began playing horn, I had metal allergies. However, they weren't very severe, so I played as any of you would. But over time, due to exposure, it's gotten to the point where I'm now allergic to every metal but platinum and titanium. So I actually have to play now with gloves, and I use a titanium mouthpiece. Metal contact dermatitis is a condition in which the skin becomes red, sore, or inflamed after direct contact with a substance. This is according to the National Institutes of Health and the U.S. National Library of Medicine.
A recent study by the North American Contact Dermatitis Group lists these 4 metal allergens as the top among the population at large. You'll see nickel is at 18.7%, which is very important because nickel is found in the composition of many musical instruments. So it's important that we're aware of that. Can be seen in many different forms. Gold, we're all familiar with 8.7%, jewelry, cobalt, and then chromate at 4.3%.
Some facts we have about contact dermatitis. The exposures to these allergens can either cause the onset or the worsening of symptoms, much like I described about my own experience. Body piercings have been directly correlated with the development of contact dermatitis, which is why women are far more likely to develop this than men. Allergies are worsening, and we've seen in the news, especially peanut allergies have gotten a lot of focus, but nickel allergies are also something that's gained increasingly more common among the population. Nickel has produced far more cases of contact dermatitis than all other metals combined. This is because of the use of it as an alloying agent in even materials such as gold and silver. And because of this, brass does not typically cause dermatitis in brass players. It's instead the trace amounts of nickel in the composition of this material.
So how does it directly affect the student in the classroom? First, it can prevent them from participating at all. And even once they find a way to do so, it could impede upon their ability to make music, depending on the situation. It can limit their choice of instrument if they're not aware of the ways that the instruments can be adapted, which we will talk about later in this presentation. And again, once they find a way to adapt them, it takes time and money to figure out how to do so. And we'll talk about that as well in just a little bit.
So how do you recognize a student that might have metal contact allergic dermatitis? One thing you want to look for is where the reaction is occurring. A good way to look for this is to have your student hold their actual instrument and look at where the reaction is and see if it actually lines up with the instrument. If it doesn't, maybe it's something totally different, but chances are if it is lining up, that's probably related. Another thing you want to know is what the reaction actually looks like, and if that is correlating to the actual definition of what contact dermatitis is. You also want to know if this reaction is chronic. Is it occurring every time? And also another important thing to find out is if the student reacts to other metal objects. This is obviously not something we want you to experiment with, but it's a great question to ask the student and the parents. If they have experienced these kinds of reactions before, it's very likely it could be occurring now. One of the most important things about this topic is to cut off the contact with the allergen as quickly as possible. This will limit their allergies as a whole, so hopefully they won't get to the point like me where they're allergic to almost everything.
So here are some very basic steps for the music educator. Consult the school nurse if you think that your student is having a reaction, especially right at the time, because they might be able to assist you in getting them the kind of help that they need. Take a picture of the reaction. It's hard to remember to do this, but it can go away, and it's important that you're documenting it as it happens. Contact the parents and guardians. They might be aware of the allergy, or they might not be. Either way, you need to contact them so that they know what's going on in their classroom. They might be able to help you, and then ultimately they need to help their own child. Suggest that the students see an allergist if they haven't already, because then they can get diagnosed and then the proper care can be put in place. Discuss possible adaptive strategies and implement them, be aware of those, and know what to do for each instrument individually. Consider pursuing a 504 plan so that you can document what's going on and making sure that they're getting the proper equipment that they need to be successful. You could also consider pursuing an IEP, but that's more reserved for extreme cases only. Usually a 504 in this case is just what you would need for the student.
Our adaptive techniques that we'll focus on are about stopping the contact with the hands and the mouth and lip area. Another thing you should be aware of is if you have a student who you think is reacting, they might also show some reactions on their neck and chest. For brass instruments, we would suggest marching band gloves. This is a great way to take off a lot of the contact that they'll have. It can make a world of difference. Also, another great thing that we have is ceramic gun paint. Sounds a little crazy. My father, who loves guns, came up with this idea. And it's a great way to adapt a mouthpiece they already have that's metal, and it's also a good way to have them playing on metal mouthpieces, yet it's not anywhere near as expensive as the gold, stainless steel, or titanium alternatives. Another thing to know is if you have a student who's playing with a plated mouthpiece, or if one of these painted ones, you need to make sure that you're continuously checking it to see if it's wearing off. If it is, a quick fix that I found is nail polish. You don't want to use it all the time, but if you need a quick fix, it's a great idea. I would suggest using colored so you can see when it wears off.
For woodwind instruments, when you need to cover tone holes, particularly on clarinet or open-holed flutes, nitrile gloves can help with finer motor skills. And for flute lip plates, we suggest using electrical tape, as we've covered the plate here. And it's still playable. I just played it earlier today. And you can use Scotch tape as a quick fix as well, and it doesn't get in the way of the airstream.
Our mouthpiece alternatives are focusing on plastic, which is a great option, especially for the younger students you might have who don't want to spend as much money and maybe are still changing mouthpiece sizes. Also, gold-plated can be a great option, but you should be aware that there are still some people with gold allergies. Stainless steel usually costs more than gold, and it's a little harder to find, but people are less likely to react to that. Titanium coated is a great option. However, it's very difficult to find. I only know one company that makes them, and currently they're only coating the rims in titanium anymore. So when I got mine, it was actually a little different of a process. For strings instruments, we would suggest gut strings for your typical string instruments. They're not as difficult to find as you might think, and they actually don't cost as much as you would probably expect. Elixir strings are also a great option for guitar. These are regular strings coated in Gore-Tex, so it still provides a barrier between the string and the student, but you still get that same metallic sound. Here are some pictures of our adaptive techniques at work. This is how I adapted my flute for class flute last year. Me playing my horn the way I currently do. Kelly mouthpiece for trombone file. This is actually me back in high school. I use a Kelly French horn mouthpiece all the way up till junior year in high school. So it's not going to limit a student, especially a student who's not too concerned about continuing in performance. It's a great option for them. This is also me playing saxophone with nitrile gloves and me playing my horn as I regularly do.
We've come up with a list of resources for the music educator: metal terms, an instrumental composition reference list, alternative mouthpieces and flute head joints, as well as adaptive equipment. So here are a few samples of those. The metal terms list some basic terms, metal terms or allergy-related terms, the definition and the source that we got them from. Oops. Here's the instrumental composition reference list, just a sampling. This one's for flute in particular. The metal, some of these I've never heard of before, but some of them are fairly common: gold, nickel, silver, etc. The definition, like the alloy, what they're made of, the source that we got this from, and some sound characteristics. And then
this is how we've made some spreadsheets for alternative mouthpieces and head joints. Here I have the model, what kind of alternative material it's made out of, the company, the price, and we also have a hyperlink that'll take you straight to a page where you can buy it.
These are growing lists as we're finding more.
I've done the same thing for gloves, both nitrile and marching band gloves. Marching band gloves specifically, I've broken down into buying it by the pair and by the dozen. I would suggest buying them by the dozen. It'll last you a long time, and it's much more cost efficient. They're not easy to find. If you have any questions for us, or if you would like to contact us and get some PDF file versions of all of our resources, please feel free to email us.
and